Yes, well, this is the last remaining bridge in this town. You can see it's been battered, it's got makeshift wooden safety barriers, but compared to the rest, at least it's intact. Even after this disaster has been cleared up, the loss of such vital infrastructure will be felt for years to come. But this emergency is still very much happening. To give you a flavour of the tension here, today some people fled to higher ground because a rumour went around that a dam had gone. That turned out to be a bridge with a similar sounding name, but you can feel the fear and the raw anger of what's happened here. There are some very remote areas that only were able to be reached today, but it's this place here, the district of Ahrweiler, which is feeling it the most. They've had the most amount of deaths here, 2/3 of those. And as for the missing, the official count toll is in its hundreds, but one local council leader told us today that they believe it's as many as 3,000. They said that they hope that many of those will just not have access to contacts and that they will show up, but the emergency services are still working around the clock to find those people. We spent the day here in the town of Ahrweiler. As the water slowly begins to ebb away, the catastrophic damage of the floods becomes clearer. In Ahrweiler, one of the worst affected areas in Western Germany, people piece through their shattered lives, trying to fix the damage, even when it's futile. At least 140 people have died in Germany and more than 25 in Belgium. Days of heavy rain caused the flash floods, devastating everything in its path, in some cases even sweeping away whole houses. You can really see the force of the water all along this road. There's cars flipped upside down, almost vertical, people's homes just covered in mud on the side of the road. But of course the bigger cost of all this is the over 100 lives that have been lost and the hundreds more who are still missing.
I think we will find many people who lost their houses, lost their lives perhaps, and I think this would be some scary few days that will come.
How many people are still missing at the moment?
We are missing about 3,000 of people. So we don't know where they are. It may be that they are only with friends. There are people they were found in gardens, in trees, and in houses. So that's really not nice for those people who found them at all.
People have come to the area from all over Germany to help, a process not helped by the thick mud and blocked roads. You see the water line?
Yeah, the water lines where it ends here on the house.
It was 2 days before this man was able to access his 80-year-old grandmother-in-law's house. She'd been trapped upstairs.
But we found her here.
In the water?
In the water, yeah. It was a terrible look at her, and I think I never forget it. It was.
So you had to save her from the water?
Yes. Yeah, it was all destroyed. The water only in the cellar, but she were full of dirt, and yes, that's where we found her. And so.
The weight of what has happened here sits heavily on those still living among it. The loss in just minutes of memories, comforts, and in the worst of cases, lives. Rescue missions have been put on pause in Erstadt. Only drones are able to survey the area after a landslide there. Officials say the ground is still so soft it could give way at any moment. Many factors contribute to flooding, but a warming atmosphere caused by climate change makes extreme rainfall more likely. Chancellor Angela Merkel has called for a determined battle against climate change. And maybe the stark image of cars, one of the biggest causes of it, battered by nature, will focus minds after this natural disaster of historic proportions.
Well, earlier I spoke to flood forecasting expert Dr. Linda Spate, and I began by asking her why the floods in Germany were so devastating.
Well, there was just such a large amount of rain over a couple of days. So I think the figures that they're quoting are 2 months worth of rainfall falling in just 2 to 3 days. So with that amount of rainfall falling, it's, you would expect to see this amount of flooding and this devastating impacts that have been caused, and the just devastation that's happened is not unpredictable. So we've seen from the climate change models that these kind of events will become more likely, and indeed they are becoming more frequent as the climate warms. So it wasn't, unfathomable that such a large event would occur across Germany. And for me, I think one of the sad things about this is that we seem to have been caught unprepared for it.
Why were countries unprepared?
Well, I think there's many reasons here. One of the key things about flooding is you often see it and think it's something that would happen to someone else. It's not something that would happen in my particular area. So in this example, there were excellent warnings from the weather services and from the European Flood Alert System that picked up this event coming 3 to 5 days in advance, but no action was taken on those warnings. And that's something where I think, we could really improve in this situation. And no action was taken on those warnings, possibly because they weren't sent to the right people. No one had the information that they needed, or the warnings were delivered in a way that didn't promote action.
Now, obviously, the scenes in Germany and Belgium are nightmarish scenes. We have seen lower level, but flooding here in London, here in England. What happened? Can you give us an idea of what was going on in the UK with the flooding?
I think people are just unaware that they are at risk of flooding. So a lot of London, is at risk of surface water flooding. So that means when there's heavy rainfall events like that, there will be flooding. And you can't really protect against that. But one of the key things we can do is be more prepared and, be ready to take action and be aware that we are at risk. So when those weather warnings are issued by the authorities, we can actually be proactive in protecting ourselves against these kind of events.
So perhaps across Europe, does the infrastructure need to be better?
Well, if you're talking about infrastructure in terms of flood defences, then I think that with that amount of water that came in Germany, it's really not practical to build flood defences to protect against that. We certainly need to be building in more resilient ways. So thinking about how we can live with water and build properties which perhaps we can just clean out and, recover from much quickly.
What sort of action would you like to see from political leaders to deal with this?
The way we've dealt with the coronavirus case, we seem to have been acting in always one step behind, and that's not a way we can go forwards. We need to think about these things now so that when we happen, we're ready.
Do you think these scenes will make governments take flooding more seriously? Will we see more money being pumped into actually protecting people?
I think it's a bit of a sad thing that we have to have these big events to get that reaction, but at least something good can come out of it, and we can take this as an opportunity to learn lessons across the international community and make changes for the future about how we prepare ourselves to deal with these kind of events.
Dr. Linda Speight, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.